Simon.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I'm Simon Hancox. I'm here today to talk about my journey of the last 15, 16 months of my life, basically. But before I do that, here's my little dog, Hank. Hank is, thank you. You can do that again if you like. Yeah. He's a little bit bigger than that now, but he's a little border terrier. We've had him for about just over a year or so now. So I live with Hank in my house in Alverston, Derby, with my two little boys, Will and Sam, who are 5 and 9 years old. I work in the not-for-profit sector in Derby, in the charitable sector, and I have done for many years now. It's really humbling, really. I speak to people that have innovations, ideas, TED kind of ideas, really, passions, determination, motivation. Sometimes it's kind of fueled by a personal tragedy, a genuine an interest, some desire to make things happen, to make that change. So every day in my working life, I speak to these people, I connect with them, and I help try and facilitate and grow that idea, much in the same way that our good friend here is growing furniture, and we're all kind of growing these ideas together as well. This is my mum and dad. When I kind of told them I've been nominated for a TED talk, we got chatting, and they're quite gregarious people. They've always been surrounded by friends and family all of their lives, really. And I'm getting to the point here. There is a reason why I put my folks on there. I was very, very poorly when I was born. I almost died, and I was in hospital, incubator jobby for quite some time. And I kind of wonder if that's kind of affected in a very positive way the relationship that I have with my parents, because they were to and from hospital more or less every day to come and see me, see how I was doing, etc. And I've seen them surrounded by friends and family more or less all of their life, really, and I wonder how that's kind of affected me as well. This is Annabel. I met Annabel in 1994 in the not too far from here in the Blue Note in Derby. Can we get a shout out for the Blue Note, maybe? Well done. Very good, that's made my day. So in the heady days of Britpop, Blur, Oasis, Pulp and all that, we had a shared love of David Bowie, vodka and alternative cinema, kind of in that order as well, really. We connected very, very well, very, very quickly. Friends and family could see we were very, very close together, very, very well connected, very early on. So 4 years later, we got married. We kind of began our journey together, if you like, really, this kind of next stage of our lives together. And new jobs, new houses, new haircuts for Annabel, not for me, unfortunately, and new additions to our family as well. So Will came along in 2004, and Sam came along in 2008. We got changes in jobs, as I say. Annabel entered into the world of education, which is something that she'd always wanted to do. And basically, you know, that was our life. We were very happy. It was in 2012, April 2012, when Annabel found a lump in her breast. And at that stage, we were, you know, a little bit shocked and surprised and concerned. We were both turning 40 years of age that particular year. And we've been making plans, really, to go to the States at Christmas time, to spend, you know, like a joint 40th birthday together and have a great time, as you do, even to the point of sorting the kids out in terms of they're going to go here, So we had this news, and obviously it was a big shock. It felt particularly cruel as Annabel had entered the next stage of her life in terms of job and everything else, really. So it was triple negative breast cancer, quite aggressive. And because of Annabel's physical makeup, in terms of what she was receptive to and not, we were a little bit limited in terms of what drugs would work and what wouldn't. But chemotherapy began. So we started on a plan on a chemo cocktail. And initially, over the summer period, things went well. It was great. We were looking for that word, shrinkage. You know, we were looking for some positive signs, really, from the consultants and from the team. And initially, over the summer, it was great. It went really well. Bike rides, walks out, runs, holidays, all that kind of stuff. That went really well. That was fine. And that kind of aided, you know, our well-being and our position, if you like. And then towards the end of that period, towards the end of that particular chemotherapy phase, it was pretty clear that the cancer was a bit more aggressive, really, than what we thought. And unfortunately, it was clear that the cancer was taking hold, really, and things weren't really working in the way that we wanted them to. This is a photo taken at the end of October in 2012 on a trip to York. So I surprised Annabel with one of my many surprises. Most of them didn't work out in life, really, but anyway, this one was okay, and I quite like that. So I went to York for the weekend, did all the usual stuff, ghost walk the walls and all the rest, really. And Annabel was quite healthy at that point. But things went kind of downhill from then on after that. And the November and December's came, the cold winter air and everything else, really. And it was quite a tricky time for us, really. Christmas came. We went into hospital on Christmas Eve, and because Annabel was quite difficult at that point. I took the kids in with me on Christmas Day, and they were being their usual noisy selves, really running up and down the corridors, getting on the nerves of the nurses and the team there as well. But that's great, that's fine, that's what kids do, isn't it, really? But then Annabel died by my side on the 28th of December, a few days later. So that was obviously a huge shock, massive change in our lives, really, for myself and the kids. So, and I thought, okay, well, I need to let people know, really. And I got Annabel's phone, because obviously I told all my friends and family knew. And I started phoning people, really. People that I didn't know in Annabel's phone. Started making connections, talking to people. And I unravelled something that was quite new to me, really. I didn't realise that Annabel was so vocal and so well loved and liked, really, on the Macmillan forums that she was involved with. She wasn't quite moderating the forums, but she was a very active person on there, really. And she connected with a lot of people, some of which are in this room today. Some of the people that I spoke to felt that they wanted to do something to kind of commemorate Annabel, if you like, because Annabel had been doing lots of research in local areas to see, how Bev in Huddersfield could be supported by this group, how so-and-so could be supported in Bath by this group over here. So she'd done a lot for other people, really, and people wanted to kind of give something back as well. So the Race for Life was happening, as it does every year across Britain, and a couple of the ladies wanted to kind of get involved and run a Race for Life group. And Ali, who is over here, put your hand up please, Ali, thank you. So she came up with a name of Annabel's Angels, and she said, would you mind if we run a race in London under the name of Annabel's Angels, raising money for Cancer Research UK? I said, no, that's fine, that's okay, that's great. Okay, and then one cropped up in Bath, and then in Aberdeen, and then in Bradford, and then in Nottingham, Derby, So there were loads that kind of cropped up, quite a lot, really, and it was quite humbling and, wow, okay. So then Ali got on the phone again, it's your fault again, and said, we need some kind of design, we need a name, we need a t-shirt design, something really. So I said, okay, I'll speak to the kids. So I had a word with Will, who was 8 at the time. I said, let's get the pens and pencils out, so this is what we did. He thinks it's his work. He's looking at a career in freelance design, and he doesn't get out of bed for less than £5,000, apparently, so he says. So he should be here in this room, shouldn't he, really? But we topped and tailed this with a designer who's based in New Zealand, a very successful designer who's also been touched by cancer, really. So all of this has been kind of created by letting people in, letting new people into my life, into our lives. I started meditating at the time as well, because I always wanted to try and understand how Buddhists were always so calm. They are, aren't they? They're always so calm, really. Why is that? So I started going to the Tara Buddhist Centre down the road at Etwall, and found that incredibly relaxing. I really wanted to embrace this idea of impermanence, that letting go is not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you love a person any less or anything like that at all. It's about the acceptance of life and death, really. I also started writing. I started writing a blog. It was more or less a letters blog to Annabel, really, to tell her. I knew she wouldn't read them, I know that, but it was more or less designed to kind of show other people how I was feeling. So I ended up writing 32 letters, really, and the ones in kind of December, January, February time, they were pretty dark days, really. But then moving forward, it was a little bit different, really. And anyone that wanted to ask, the phone was going all the time. How you doing? How you doing? I would point to blog. So here's what I'm doing. Point to blog. That's kind of what I would say, my standard requirement. How you doing, Simon? There you go. Okay. So people would know, but then it kind of went pretty viral, really. I think it's something like 40,000 kind of views within, 6 months or so, and it went a bit mad. Media got involved, local, regional, national, even the telly people got involved, and it was all a bit, I think it was strange that here's a guy who is kind of sharing his thoughts in a very unusual way, perhaps, really. Maybe a little bit too soon after what's happened. I don't know. So, but what I really wanted to do was kind of connect with other guys, really, to talk to other guys, really, to see what they were feeling, to see if what I was feeling was kind of the norm, really. I spoke to lots of my friends and family about this journey, but they were kind of involved with me already. I didn't want to burden myself. I didn't want them to think, oh, Christ, it's Simon again, he's crying, pick him up off the floor, that kind of thing. I know they wouldn't think that, I know that, but it's my perception, it's how I would think. So I wanted to speak to other guys, other people that were kind of going through what I was going through. So my best friend Matthew rings me up one day. You need to turn the telly on. Okay, turn the telly on. And it was a breakfast TV programme. And there's a guy called Ben who was talking on there to the telly people, really about his journey. He'd lost his wife very recently in a car accident in London. And he got a young boy that he was bringing up on his own now. And he also wanted to connect with other guys as well. So we started talking. I managed to get his email address, got chatting late at night, early in the morning, more or less all the bloody day, really. And then we had this idea of, well, we're connected here, we're connecting with each other, and we're talking about some common stuff, and we're helping and supporting each other. So maybe there are other guys out there like this that would like to benefit from that as well. Okay. So about a month or so later, it's an online forum called the Gentleman's Room. It sounds a bit seedy, I know that. Yeah, that's kind of why I put that very manly Fight Club for Widowers thing underneath. So, yeah, and there's people, guys in its same position as us, really, from different countries, mainly English-speaking countries, from England, States, all over, really, connect on there. And we're there more or less all the time during the day, in the evening, in the early hours, because widowers don't really sleep. So there's me and Ben. Got me and Reese and myself and Mike, just a couple of us really, that have met up as well. And all this has been made possible by this idea of letting people in. Nigel will like this one. So, I mean, grief can play a funny part in your life, really. It can kind of, you think you're kind of doing okay, and it oscillates like this, really. This is on the top of Snowdon, minus 20, with an 8-year-old who's clinging onto the trig point at the top. No idea how we're going to get down. Poles are at the youth hostel, and I've not got my crampons with me. So it was all a bit, but you feel this sense of invincibility, really, because what else can happen in your life? You know, you've lost the partner that you've had for 20 years. Really, there's not much anymore that can happen, you know, in terms of worse things than that. There's been a lot of research written about and theory written about grief, really. The most famous, really, is by a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote about the 5 stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And these have been used and quoted and misquoted as well by psychologists, psychotherapists over the years, really. Not so much nowadays, but it has been the benchmark, if you like, for years. But in reality, they're not linear. Grief is unique. There is no real set pattern. And Elizabeth herself, just before she died, stated her annoyance at how she was misquoted, really. She said that these are 5 common stages. They're not 5 required stages, really. And she said, I'm more than these 5 stages, and so are you. Did lots more reading as well. Brené Brown, who's no stranger to TED. There's a wonderful graphic novel by a guy called Anders Nielsen, who also lost his partner to cancer. And Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking is a 12-month diary, a diary 12 months after her husband died of a heart attack. So going back to the ladies that I talked about, they wanted to do something a little bit more beyond the Race for Life. They had this idea of setting up a fundraising support group where we could tangibly help women and families that are going through what we were going through. So that's what we did. And so this is Nicola with our cheeky little logo on the top there. So this is a photo shoot done down in London with a photographer called Rachel Raphael, who's incredibly talented. We've got Linda and Amanda there as well. We started selling these things, these wristbands, mugs, T-shirts, all the rest really, all with the name of raising money to to become a registered charitable trust in Derby, where we'll directly support families and local cancer-related support groups. Going back to the Cancer Research UK Race for Life, they spoke to me, they asked me and my children to come and open the Race for Life. So that was a bit of a surreal experience, talking to 5,000, addressing 5,000 women, all there with the regalia, with these funny things sticking out your head, wings, pink, and all that kind of business. And me kind of pouring my heart out and trying not to weep. Quite surreal, really. But we did it, and we did it well, and we raised thousands of pounds, for cancer research all around the country, as a means of doing that. And again, it comes back to this core of letting people in. And in terms of the charity, we're going well. We've got people running, writing, climbing mountains, all the rest really. Backpacks, huge events, big things at Pride Park, all the rest really. We've been involved in Guinness World Records, auctions, Westfield charity climbs, and all the rest really. And the idea is, again, like I say, that we create a grant-making trust locally that will directly support families in and around Derby, really. So it makes their life a little bit easier, really. We're not going to be doing the same thing as what Cancer Research UK do, because that's all about the research. But it's all about making people's lives easier, really, where we can. Headspace, I don't know if anyone's heard of Headspace. If anyone has, can you put your hands up? Yeah. Well, they got in touch because they read about the blogs as well. And they saw me kind of dabble with meditation. And they got in touch. And they said, okay, we really like what you're trying to do here. So how's about we work in partnership? So, yeah, okay, that's fine. So every person who follows Annabel's Angels, every kind of follower, if you like, they want to, we've got free 12-month subscription for Headspace. So anyone here wants it, then grab me at the end. Yeah, so again, that's been all made possible really by letting these new people and these new organisations into our lives, really. So just to finish, really, we're kind of doing okay. It still oscillates, and it will always oscillate for years, really, I imagine. Grief isn't fixed in 6 months, a year, 18 months, 24, however long, really. You never... Moving forward doesn't necessarily mean you leave something right behind, really. It's about, I think, pushing yourself and challenging yourself, really. And I really like this idea of it was mentioned in the talk by Kelly earlier on the video, that if you can kind of somehow summon up the courage, I suppose is the way, to kind of speak to your friends, speak to people that you've known for years, speak to new friends and acquaintances, really, and present with them a tangible reason for them to help you and to support you. Because that's what they want to do. That's what they will want to do. They will want to tangibly help you in some kind of way, really. So I wrote 32 letters to Annabel in a very kind of open, very frank, very honest way. And I firmly believe that while we're all here today, really, while we're all here and exist, we're here to kind of individually and collectively support each other to live this world of life as best as we can. So that's my message to you. Open the door, let people in. Thank you.